After the travesty that was Little Nightmares 3, I was done with this franchise. I made a video on it calling it a cheap imitation of the original games, and from then, I moved on. I started getting excited for Reanimal instead. So the other day, when I was scrolling Steam and I saw that the Little Nightmares VR spin-off just dropped, I had my doubts. This was yet another game from a studio that isn't Tarsier, and a VR game at that. I went in expecting absolutely nothing special, and somehow this might be the most Little Nightmares a Little Nightmares game has felt in years. It left me with a question that I did not expect to be asking. Is Little Nightmares actually back? Because I'm aware that not everyone cares about VR, I'm gonna split this video into two sections. First, we're gonna talk about the gameplay, the puzzles, enemies, how the game actually feels. And then in the second part, we're gonna discuss the writing and what this spin-off could mean for the future of Little Nightmares. So feel free to skip the VR aspect using YouTube's chapter feature if that doesn't interest you. There's no hard feelings between us if you do. The game is pretty short. It took me about 4.5 hours to beat, but it took other people 3 hours, and that's because my frail beta male body can't handle having a VR headset strapped to my head for longer than 20 minutes at a time. But after beating this game, I'm starting to realize that Little Nightmares is made for virtual reality. Who would have guessed that the game about towering huge monster people would be more effective if you're looking through the eyes of a tiny little child? Every enemy I encountered, the huge titanic architecture that you can often see, it just looks so good through the eyes of VR. It doesn't translate well over a YouTube video, but trust me, if you play this game, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. Take the teacher, for example, or the thin man. Can you imagine what it looks like from a little child's perspective to be staring up at those guys, or to see the teacher's huge snaky neck swirling towards you? It's terrifying. And speaking of those original characters, one thing I really appreciate about this game is that it does acknowledge its roots. You play as Dark 6, and you traverse through this place called the Transmission, I think, which is basically just this messed up multiverse-ass place that's constantly warping and things are flying all around you, and you're traveling through all these weird locations. I really like that this game features 6 again, but it doesn't continue her story. It more so fills in the gaps of what we don't already know about her. I know I wouldn't want a VR spin-off to be the one to continue 6's journey, but seeing these callbacks to Little Nightmares 2 was really cool. Atmospherically, it's really good. The soundtrack is something that I don't know if people are talking about it, but it might be the best in the franchise. It had some real spiel bangers on there constantly. Usually, I'm not one for this, but in the case of a VR game, I would have liked to see a few more jump scares. I actually don't think there was a single one. The whole game is kind of built on atmosphere and the sense of claustrophobia and anticipation, but there were several opportunities where I wished that I got jump scared, but instead, the game kind of just fizzles the scare out rather than shoving it right in your face. For example, you do a bunch of crawling through vents in this game, and of course we all remember that one scene from Little Nightmares 2 with the teacher shoving her neck through the vents chasing after you, and as cheap as it would have been, I would have loved to see that make a comeback in VR perspective. I was really anticipating it, but it didn't happen, unfortunately. There's some other sections where you're completely obscured by pitch black darkness, and just having some sort of monster pop up in your face out of nowhere would have been awesome. But I do respect that they wanted the atmosphere to carry rather than cheap scares. I get it. There were also a lot of chase sequences which were really terrifying because you could just hear the thin man's footsteps right behind you and you'd look back and he's right there. There's another sequence with the teacher and you kind of have to climb up these bookshelves to get away from her. It was one of the few sections where I got really stuck because the game doesn't always make it obvious where to go or or what to do next. It's not very often that that happened, but it did, and I feel like that's important to acknowledge. We've also got the addition of two brand new villains in the form of the Conductor and the Naturalist. The Conductor section was unfortunately probably my least favorite in terms of gameplay and in terms of his character. He crawls up walls and ceilings, kind of like the Doctor, which was really scary in the moment, but looking back on it, it's a shame that there wasn't a new gimmick there. His whole section on the train also drags out for way longer than it should. It's the same gameplay loop over and over again, with you crawling from space to space while he walks past you. For a game that's playtime is so short, it is a shame that some sections really drag out and become repetitive. You're going to be doing a lot of climbing, a lot of hiding, and honestly, I think the game could have done with being even 20 minutes shorter than it was. But the fact that all of this was in VR and the gameplay is so fresh and it feels like Little Nightmares is meant for this sort of gameplay, I still had a great time nonetheless. The Naturalist is an awesome new enemy. It looks just weird and fucked up enough that it feels right at home in the Little Nightmares franchise. A lot of its sections had you lighting up matches to see where you're going because there's bear traps and alarms dotted all over the place, and if it spots you, it will take a picture of you that is so unphotogenic that you actually die from embarrassment. There were some other cool gimmicks, like where you had to throw objects up to buttons really high up like you do in the original games, but doing it in VR and seeing this button towering way above you is just so much cooler to me. If you've looked up this game at all, you might have seen a lot of complaints about smooth turning not being in the game, which is a huge letdown to me, especially because I never use snap turning in any VR game that I play. For me, it has the opposite effect of what it's meant to do. All these sudden sharp turns constantly just kind of make me feel a little dizzy. I much rather prefer smooth turning, which unfortunately is not here at the moment. And the other thing is this border in the shape of Six's hood, which you cannot turn off. I always turn off borders in VR games because I'm okay with seeing the full screen. It did take some getting used to, but you kind of end up phasing it out eventually, which is okay, I guess. It just feels really weird that a VR game is missing all these key features that you see in literally every VR release ever. Okay, we're gonna get into a little bit of spoiler territory now, so if you don't mind that, continue watching. If you do mind that, get the hell out of here. The ending is extremely reminiscent of Little Nightmares 2. Throughout the game, you're chasing after the real Six, and you end up catching up to her, and she turns into her monstrous form again, which gameplay-wise was really awesome. There was a section where there's this ball that keeps bouncing towards you from the darkness, and you have to throw it back out, and it keeps coming back. And then suddenly Six's huge hand springs out and grabs it, and then you realize you've been playing catch with her this whole time, which is both adorable and terrifying. But the game ends with the actual real Six returning to reality, but not before she betrays her shadow self, Dark Six, and you fall down the staircase just like Mono did. I've got to say, I was a little bit disappointed with this ending, just because it was so similar to what we've already seen. Story-wise, maybe there's something there that might interest people, but I just wasn't very happy with it. You end up dropping down into this abyss with a huge mountain of these music boxes at the bottom, which have clearly fallen from up there as well. And the only takeaway I can really get from it is that perhaps this whole story is some sort of loop. It doesn't seem like this is the first time this has happened, with Dark Six being betrayed by Real Six, but I promise you, I'm not the guy you want if you want to hear about the lore. Do let me know your theories though, because I really am interested. So now that I've finished it, is Little Nightmares back? Well, I think Altered Echoes is a game I prefer over Little Nightmares 3, as mind-boggling as that may sound to some of you. I really did not enjoy the third entry, and I don't think I'm ever gonna come back to it again, but I could definitely see myself returning to this in a few years' time just because of how effective it was with portraying the size of the creatures and the land, and how fun the gameplay was at times. The fact that this comes from a small VR dev team called Iconic is also insane to me. me? Because Supermassive, who were given the rights to make a mainline Little Nightmares game, couldn't manage to really stay loyal to it or extract what was good about that series. But the way that Iconic go about with the story and the enemies pleases me as an OG fan. And they also add their own spin on it with the VR aspect. I'm pretty sure this is like their first proper horror game as well, so congratulations to you. You are awesome. As much as I would love for Little Nightmares to be back and for me to be excited about this franchise again, I think this game is a one-off. Unless Supermassive really step it up with the next entry and learn from their mistakes and from player reception, I just don't have a lot of hope in them. Hilariously, I recently revisited some of the dark anthologies and I realized just how bad Supermassive are at making their own games, never mind someone else's IP. So Little Nightmares is not back. It's a small step in the right direction, but we're a long ways off before I can actually be excited for these games again. The fact that I think a side project is better than the last mainline entry really just says a lot about how dire this situation is. So that's pretty much all from me. If you haven't already seen it, check out my critique of Little Nightmares 3 to understand why I'm going so brutally hard on Supermassive. I'm gonna clock out now. See ya.